In the last video, we installed this really nice oil filter relocation kit, and in the video before that one, we got some seats fitted, and we also finalized the bonnet support catch, so now the bonnet shuts properly and it stays shut. If you haven't watched those videos yet, then you should go back and have a look at them. But in this video, we're going to do a bit more wiring, and we're going to try and see if we can get this thing running once again. So as you can see, we're still missing the radiator that we need to be able to run this engine for any extended period of time, but that's okay because we can still get the thing running and we can still run it for a few seconds. Hopefully nothing will go bad. But this start is going to be quite a big deal because it'll be the first time this engine has run, assuming it starts, since we have changed the engine mounts and also since I've done extensive work to the fuse box as well. With those two major things having changed, there's quite a lot of variables that we've introduced here since the last time this thing started. So fingers crossed we don't run into any issues. With a complete oiling system, we now have an engine that can crank, which now means that we can work on the electrical again. But first, I need to take the dashboard out. In order to give myself more clearance for the Audi loom, I'm cutting away some of the noise dampening material. I'm not chasing grams here, so I'm not going to remove the entire mat during this stage. Now that the dashboard is out of the way, now is the time to work on the throttle pedal. Here I'm making a plate for the Audi pedal to bolt to. Then I'll build a structure which connects that to the bulkhead. Because of the way the original pedal worked, its mounting point isn't suitable for the new pedal, so I'm picking up off the brake cylinder mount for some additional strength. After a slight revision to the design, I welded in a temporary rod that I can use to tweak the position of everything, then begin to build up the rest of the structure around it. Pretty clear that this is definitely a version 1, but the pedal is pretty much where I need it, and we can tick this item off the list for now. So now a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, it's been such a long time since I first started uploading these videos that my hair has now grown long. That is a pretty good indication of how long this project has been going on. When I first started doing this, I was doing things in a linear kind of fashion. So I'd do one thing, finish it, make the video, upload the video, start on the next thing. And that was very easy for me to do. But now it's become apparent that because I don't have as much time as I used to, because of just my working hours, I have had to start to parallelize my workflow, which basically now means that I have many things going on at the same time. So, I might have, say, I'm working on the exhaust, but I'm nowhere near the point where that part is complete enough that I should put it into a video. I'm also working on the intercooler support, I'm working on wiring, I'm working on suspension, drive shafts, all these things that when they are all finished, they will all come together and the project will kind of just be done. But none of them are in a position in their timelines yet where they actually have any meaningful content in them. So that means that if I was to upload them, it would just be a complete mess and it would be very hard for you to follow that along. So basically I have a lot of irons in the fire, but none of them are hot enough for me to forge into a video yet. But in my mind, the project does actually have a very specific structure. The project is split up into 3 main sections, or phases if you like, and we're currently in phase 1. Phase 1 is make it work. Making it work pretty much is what it sounds like. It's getting the car to the point where it can run, it can drive, it can do all the things that are necessary for it to be deemed road legal, road safe and pass an MOT, and also be registered as a 1.8, so everything is all good on the logbook and the DVLA can't complain at me. Once phase 1 is complete, we then move on to phase 2, which is to make it nice. Making it nice is probably the more fun part. That's taking all of the janky stuff that I've done and making it nice. That means any weird brackets I've made out of scrap steel, I will make them out of proper steel that isn't pulled out of the scrap bin. Maybe improve a few things if they're deemed not up to the task, which we're only going to know when the car drives. Get rid of a bit more rust in the car, because the car does have rust. And generally just tidy everything up and make it just a really nice car rather than one that just works. And then once we've done phase 2, we move on to phase 3, which is upgrades. Now, upgrades is the really exciting part, and this is probably the one that I think people would be more interested in. The 1.8 turbo that I put in here makes 150 brake horsepower stock. That is not an awful lot of horsepower by modern standards, but in a car that weighs 750 kilos, that is a lot of power, and it's 3 times more than the CG10DE engine that I pulled out of it. That means it's going to be pretty potent straight out of the gate, but it's going to get to the point where I'm going to want more. Hopefully by the time I get to that stage, I will have already gotten used to the additional power that the 1.8 turbo gives me, which I think is a pretty good way of doing it, because I don't really want to just go straight to the maximum amount of power that engine will put out. But upgrades will involve things like upgrading the brakes, upgrading things like the exhaust to maybe like a 3-inch system, big turbo, maybe a sidewinder turbo, because I don't have any room at the back. It's going to go over the gearbox. That's going to be interesting. Upgraded radiator, upgraded tyres, all the things that are really going to push the boundaries of what the car is capable of doing. But these are all things that I don't really even want to start thinking about yet, because I have to remind myself that we are still in phase 1. And sometimes I find myself sort of sneaking into phase 2, and I start trying to make nice things when I should be making it work. So if you saw my last video, you probably remember me saying that when I made that bracket that holds the oil filter remote filter head onto the side of the chassis, I was going to make some really nice like mounting mechanism that lets you remove it without having to like bolt it in. It was this like sort of like friction fit system, and I had it all in my brain and it all worked out really well, but it was going to take me way too long to make, and it will just push everything back, and it's just not necessary. So over the next couple of videos, you're going to see jank. Not dangerous jank, but just stuff that isn't quite as perfect as you might expect me to want to make. And it's not because I am slipping my standards, it's because I just need to get it done. We are in phase 1, phase 2 is when we make it nice. What's not nice is this engine movement. The newly revised engine mounts improve rocking slightly over the previous version, but the original chassis that gave up this engine featured a torque mount, and this one will be no different. The Micra has engine mountings on both the front and back of the engine, totaling 4 attachment points to the chassis. I'm going to be using the front bracket on this crossmember to build up to. Some improvement needed then. Many conversion kits pick up off these gearbox bolts, but there isn't enough exposed thread on either of the two frontmost bolts to properly attach any bracketry to, so I'll have to try something. Okay, so I've just spent the best part of a day making something that one, doesn't work very well, and two, I can't even remove whilst it's in place. Have a look. This part's mechanically locked in place. So we've got a bolt that goes through here, that's been removed, but the part can't be removed out of here because these studs are in the way, and I can't move them this way because this prevents me from doing that. This part is mechanically locked in place and I cannot remove it unless I rock the engine back enough. Maybe I can. No, there's not enough movement. Okay, so I've made an idiot thing. Okay, actually, I'm a bigger idiot than I thought I was. All I need to do is just drop the subframe a little bit. And out it comes. Idiot. With that lapse in mental capability over with, I decided to press on and complete the bracket anyway. I wouldn't call this solution even close to perfect. For a start, it's hard mounted to the subframe with no damping material, and it merely friction fits to those exposed gearbox bolts. That said, that right hand bolt through the gearbox, along with reuse of the secondary air pump bosses, keeps everything in place rather nicely, and the bracket actually works, and that's all I can really ask of it at this stage. Now let's build a fuse panel. I have a lot of leftover wiring from the donor loom that I sometimes dip into whenever I need to extend wires or build a fuse panel, for example. The issue is that finding wires of the right colour or gauge can be tricky when it's all bundled in loom tape and conduit. What's worse is when you do liberate the wire, it's all covered in dirt and adhesive slime. So I'm taking the time here to completely strip every leftover wire and connector from the donor harness, clean it up and store it away for easy access later. Now we can build a fuse panel. The main power feed to the panel will come through this 50 amp Anderson connector, which will then send permanent power to 4 relays, plus 4 fuse positions. Two of those relays will send power to the fuse panel once they receive an ignition signal from the car. This grounding bus bar allows me to easily add additional grounds as required, and is connected to the negative terminal of the Anderson connector. Where possible, I'm using Deutsch connectors. These are by far the easiest connectors to crimp terminals for and to assemble. Definitely worth the money in my opinion. The other side of that Anderson connector is wired up, ready to attach to the car. This will allow me to easily isolate power to the fuse panel and remove it entirely by simply pulling out one easily accessible connector. The permanent 12 volt feed to that connector comes off the main battery wire from the back of the car, but because it's a new wire, it needs a fuse. I'm using this mega fuse holder to pull double duty as both a junction and to provide protection for the wire to the fuse panel, after I've modified it a little. All right, let's do a quick refresher of all the wiring. So we've got the two main harnesses that go to the ECU. One of them is mostly connected to the engine, that's the small plug. And then there's also a second harness, which is like a bigger one that connects to a lot of the stuff on the inside of the car. So the main engine harness is mostly all connected, and it all comes through this bit of loom down here, all across this mess which needs tidying up, and then through this little hole in the bulkhead. Additionally, there's also a big chunky wire directly from the battery that goes to the starter motor, and also it will go to the alternator eventually. If we come inside the car, if you look over there, there's the battery. So we've got a negative terminal that connects directly to the chassis through an old, I think that's a seatbelt bolt, which has a good strong connection to the car. And then we also have our main 12 volt power feed, which goes through a pretty chunky fuse, and then it goes all the way down towards the front of the car. I'll just plug this in now actually. That's on, and the little boot light comes on. Okay, so this mess is now completely live. This power cable comes down through here. Move that out of the way. This power cable comes through here, and then it goes through this mega fuse holder, which I'm actually just passing through. This goes towards the front, that cable you saw in the engine bay just a little while ago. So that goes into there, up through a hole. And then it goes through this fuse, which is an 80 amp fuse. It's actually probably a little bit too big for what we need, because this connector is only 50 amps, I think. So I need to get a smaller version of this. But this goes through into this Anderson connector and basically powers this entire fuse box. I've also got a little bit of a temporary solution at the moment. This black and white cable here is what powers the Micra's ignition key, or the ignition barrel. So I've had to provide that with permanent power just to get it working, but this really should be going through this distribution panel. It's just that the wire is too thick to fit through these Deutsch connectors. Speaking of Deutsch connectors, we've got flange mount 12-pin Deutsch DT power connectors. So we've got, on this side, we've got a green one, which is what powers the VAG side of stuff. So all the injectors, coils, sensors, and all that stuff get their power through this connector. And then the grey one is the Nissan one. So this is actually the one that powers or provides power to the lights and the power windows as well, although I haven't got that plugged in at the moment. But then this yellow-green wire here, this plugs into the original ECU loom for the Micra, and this blue wire here is the 12 volt feed to power the ECU when you put it on ignition. So when you turn the key to the ignition, which would normally turn the Micra's ECU on, what it's actually doing is I've just plugged it into this, and then it goes up into the fuse panel, and it actually powers or energizes these two relays. And that's what powers these fuses, and these fuses then send power back through these connectors towards the engine, and provides all the power and everything that we need. A little bit of jankiness here with the grounds. It all just goes through this at the moment, although I've got a proper ground down there, but I've connected it all up, so it's all good. The ECU itself is just sitting down there for a moment with everything all plugged in. Now for the fuel pump, this is a little bit of a question mark for me, because what should happen is that the ECU should be telling the fuel pump when to run, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet with the VAG ECU. So at the moment what I have is I have this wire here, which would normally go to the negative, like ground side of the fuel pump relay, and if I ground this, then it powers the relay when you turn the ignition on. Which is fine, but it does mean that as long as the key is in the ignition position, then it means that the fuel pump is always running, which we don't always want. So at the moment, I'm trying to figure out how to get that to work from the ECU instead, but for now, we just got it plugged into there. I'm just going to stop myself there. At the time of putting this video together, I managed to get the fuel pump to trigger from the Audi ECU. That black and yellow wire is normally connected to pin 106 on the Micra's ECU, which is a switched ground. The Audi ECU also controls its fuel pump relay with a switched ground, but from pin 65. All I had to do was connect the white and purple wire from pin 65 of the Audi ECU to that black and yellow cable on the Micra harness, and it all seems to work properly now. Up here is the 428 relay. This is the main relay that powers the ECU. I actually want to put this relay in this panel with the rest of them so that it's all nice and neat and together. The reason why I haven't done that is because this relay is a little bit strange. It's still a standard relay, but it's wired up in a weird way where you've got power coming from the ECU into the relay and then back out again. The wiring diagram for it is a bit weird and strange to understand, so until that's sorted out, that's just sitting there separately. So what that means is that when we turn the key with the battery connected, everything all lights up, and we can hear the fuel pump priming. I'm not sure if you can hear that. But all those relays over there clicked, which is a good sign, and you can hear the throttle body doing its self-test thing that it does when it turns on. But before I give it a test, I need to fill the gearbox with oil. Look at how bloody loud that was. Well, maybe someone should start building an exhaust for it.